I'm still intuitively confused by how an Elon Musk or Eric Schmidt can do strong psychedelics and still be tech bro capitalist assholes.
Yeah, but check it out. Like the only psychedelic or quote unquote psychedelic I know Elon has used that he's admitted to is ketamine, which is
Mhm.
not like a classic psychedelic, it's a dissociative. And that makes total sense to me because the transhumanist needs dissociation in order to
Right.
keep transhumaning.
Right. So you rise above and see the world like a game of Sim City, right? You're
Exactly, yeah.
disconnected from it. Right. And ketamine does do fuck, fuck. It does do that. You're right.
Douglas Rushkoff, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's been a while.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
Our mutual friend Eric Davis said, we did a conversation about the relevance or irrelevance of Gen X a while back. He
Yeah.
said, you got to talk to my friend Doug about this.
Yeah.
You're kind of a quintessential Gen Xer. I mean, you were active in the 1990s in the kind of psychedelic technology world. You interviewed Timothy Leary and Terence McKenna. Um, and you've continued your exploration of both technology and psychedelics, among other things. But I'm really curious. We're at October, just about 2024. Looking out from your perspective, from your perch, what are you seeing out in the world of technology and psychedelics that both, on one hand, maybe excites you, and on the other hand, what's concerning you these days?
Gosh. Well, I feel, I feel recently, yeah, kind of released back into the world. My daughter went to college, I'm living a more independent life. And my re-entry to New York, this coincided sort of with Climate Week and all these events that are going on. And I feel like I'm re-meeting the people and flavors of activity that I saw beginning in the 90s, but working in a much more mature way. Um, so there's like a woman, Marissa Feinberg, um, organized something called Psychedelic Climate Week, because so many people who do psychedelics end up having great climate insights and understand how the world works and all. And that's in some ways, that's the original 1988 Fraser Clark London techno pagan rave origin. They had a magazine called Evolution. They were kind of crusty pagan kids listening to 120 beat per minute music outside in a moon festival or something. So it's that, but it's sort of back, but with PhDs and medical doctors and advanced Buddhists and climatologists really looking at how does this work? When I kind of dropped out of the scene to sort of have a kid and a family and do all that, um, people were dancing to raves in San Francisco under flashing lights. And now the same people are doing 100-person mushroom ceremonies, right? So again,
Hmm.
it's a DJ like figure, maybe East Forest or somebody, layering music using entirely digital stuff. Only instead of like dancing under lights, now people are lying on the floor, with little masks on their eyes and having, again, psilocybin experiences, maybe instead of ecstasy ones. And they're doing it, a little bit more, with a bit more wisdom. In the early 90s, we were trying to make contact with UFOs or achieve colonial organism and group mind, or you break on through to whatever the other side was. And now it's much, I wouldn't say it's more tame, but it's more balanced with our understanding of how the world works. We're creating active set and setting around what we're doing. So there's a maturity. So what excites me about the present moment is there's a generation of people who have seen, both the errors of Zuckerberg, Musk, and Peter Thiel and that crowd, that using digital technology unconsciously just to double down on extractive corporate capitalism is not nice or good or doesn't make us happy or doesn't help the world. Uh, and they're looking at the commons and uh, B corporations and other ways of deploying technology that actually lift people up or engage with indigenous people or let indigenous people tell stories and women and people of color. And so I see all that in the digital and the psychedelic movement. At the same time, I see a kind of runaway global investment in AI, and AI not for anything but enhancing the utility value of our technology and humans, which if humans really are just our utility value, then we're going to be worthless pretty soon because the AIs will have more than we do. And I see a lot of again, venture capitalists and corporations trying to uh, uh, lock down the IP and ownership of psychedelic experiences, or trying to keep, maybe mushrooms and organic substances illegal, but then creating analogs that they can patent so they can make money and own the IP and then use those instead of what's available. Um, or people over harvesting the rainforest, local ayahuasca growers in Peru having to hire machine gun squads to protect their land. Um, I'm seeing a lot of movement in the other direction too. Uh, so I guess I'm seeing both. I think uh, but I feel like the difference between now and then is then all the nasty stuff was happening kind of unconsciously because people accepted the ground rules of extractive competitive capitalism as just the way things are. And now people are either choosing them or choosing alternatives. So I feel like we've leveled up, which at least gives us the opportunity to move about this consciously.
Hmm. Well, one of the things that strikes me about like a comparison between then and now is in the late 80s and the 90s, there was a real sense of rebelliousness, a sense of play that I think has kind of been lost. Like therapy culture has kind of taken over psychedelics and AI for that matter. Um, and there's a lot of
Hmm.
seriousness, and yeah, a lot of that's a response to, what's going on in the world and us being more aware of what things are happening in the wider world because of information technology or, access to more information. But I'm afraid that if we lose the sense of play, we're losing something very kind of crucial to what facilitates growth and change and transformation.
Yeah, I mean, I've been calling it awe as opposed to play, because play can induce a certain kind of awe, but there's other ones too, So looking over the Grand Canyon or making love or whatever it is, and I would agree that ignoring the bliss state or ignoring the awe or the playfulness or the deep social connection. Um, it would be a mistake for a bunch of reasons. It's fun experiences are much easier to sell to people,
Hmm.
It's like
Well,
it
maybe, but like even like play has been therapized in a lot of circles. It's like we're gonna do
well,
a contact improvisation that's gonna help us with our somatic healing and all that kind of thing. And I go,
right.
oh,
Well, it's as if you can't in this society, if you can't somehow justify it as having some
Hmm.
uh,
Some value other
extrinsic
than,
value.
yeah.
Yeah, other than, and it's funny that in the Talmud, the rabbis are asked, what's the reason to read Torah? Is it for the Jewish people to understand or the Israelites, whatever they were, to understand their history, or is it in order to understand the laws for to write for the future? Because Torah has both. There's these stories and it has the laws by which people are going to live. And the rabbis all argue about it. And then, like, the big, whatever he was, the big dude rabbi that people liked then, he said, well, Ishma. And so, what? And what he said was the most important to read Torah is to read Torah. It's for its own sake.
Hmm.
To be doing things for their own. It's like, is that enough? I mean, yes and no. I think you can. I've become a strong advocate of set and setting in all this stuff and in how we do anything. And I think it's fine to have a set and setting of we are going to do this ceremony just to have fun, just to play. That's what I want. I want to play right now. I actually had a big ceremony, and the at the very end of it, I saw this 7-year-old version of myself, some internal family systems character, I guess. So
Hmm.
you don't have to get too therapeutic. This 7-year-old of me, and I heard either the mushrooms or my subconscious or whatever it was say, he just wants to play.
Hmm.
He just wants to play. And I start crying and crying and crying. This poor kid, he just wants to play and look at all the stuff.
And here
Um,
I am with my agendas and, my purposeful work and all, and there's a part of me that just wants to play.
right. He
Hmm.
wants to play, and I'm feeling so responsible for the world, for my family, for the climate, for the
Hmm.
all of from my gut biome. I'm responsible for fucking everything. And any of us, certainly any of us in this kind of social change uh, uh, sector, um, we have a codependent relationship often to what's going on in the world. I don't want to
Hmm.
blow out my birthday candles because, you know, who is suffering right now in the world that I'm supposed how dare I? How
Yeah,
dare I
who am
celebrate?
I to wish for anything? Hmm.
Right. And other than, an alleviation of global strife. But yeah, so I know I do see that. And but again, I'm not even too harsh on that. If people need reasons to do things, um, in a way that's okay as long as they're still open to the experience. It's a lot harder.
Yeah.
It's hard to go to school and then have a good time because you
Mm.
have to go to school because you're supposed to learn. And
Well, like just talking about set and setting, I mean, the reason can get in the way of all of the other kind of myriad of possibilities of experience that you could have. Like, so when I'm coaching someone who's going to go into a psychedelic ceremony, I become really cautious about talking about intention because I think that that intention, the agenda that we go in with, is coming from a particular place, a particular perspective, and that is limited in itself. So, like, could we go into an experience just like wanting to open ourselves to whatever wants to come to us, you know?
right. But then that's setting a set and setting as well. So I'm going
Yeah.
to have a mindset of openness and spontaneity, you know, in a setting of, yeah, I think that's, I think that's fine. I think that's fine, but it's still doing it. And I guess the reason why, and this is, the new book, or it's an old book, but a new version of an old book. It comes out like this month called Program or Be Programmed.
Mhm.
And I really mean that. I mean, it was funny because the book was taken kind of as a learn to code thing. And I was like, no, no, no. I meant it from a
Mm.
liberal arts standpoint that if you're it kind of if you're not programming your reality, then someone else is programming it for you. So the reason to have a set and setting is I look at the rave movement. If it had a set and setting, it wouldn't have become the EDM commercial, you know, $1 million a night DJ in Las Vegas nonsense. If we had had a set and setting, well, we did, but we lost it. Set and setting around the internet, it wouldn't have become the .com boom. It would have stayed, kind of part of the collective human potential movement. And it lost that because we didn't know. When we were doing raves, we didn't realize it was a political act to take over a parking lot at night and let people go dance in it for free. We didn't get that. And I think if
Mhm.
we had, but again, that's the difference between youth and adulthood. I think in adulthood, there is something less playful, but you create more of a container around play. Like I just got invited to some like sex event in New York. It's like this party called like Love Party or something like that. And I'm thinking, man, people go to this thing and they're all like, I guess all having sex or group sex or watching each other. It's something, people do these things. It's all good. Um, but I look and it's like like the last 2/3 of the email are all the various rules they have, what you're not allowed to do, who you're not allowed to look at, what you wear, what you don't know, because in order to have a free love party, I guess there's a whole lot of things that have to be taken into consideration. Um, and that's a grown-up version. And I'm sure, in when you're 19, you're just like, let's just go to a warehouse and everybody fuck. And I'm sure it's it's more playful, but there's so many more risks. Uh, there's so many unintended consequences that can come about from ill-considered things. Even
Mhm.
Huizinga, who wrote the book Homo Ludens, which is about Homo Ludens. He wanted to call people Homo Ludens, man the player, rather than Homo sapiens, man the knower. That would distinguish people was our deep capacity for play. And he said that play happens inside the sacred circle. You create a sacred circle so that inside the sacred circle, there's no like consequences. You're not doing anything for money. There's no utility. It's you cross over into it. And it's the creation of that sacred circle is set and setting, basically. But I think there's a lot of ways to do it. You could do it through ritual and in less conscious ways, or it's not like, oh, if you play this game, you will be better at this, or it will be a good exercise, or it's gonna bring you closer to God or closer to your children or make you more. I know what you mean. It's like people are still, I'm going to get higher up on Maslow's hierarchy of needs once I've done this thing.
Mhm.
Um, but there's still, I've become a fan of preparation, of, even if that preparation is just sitting quietly for a while.
Mhm. Yeah. Hey, I want to take a moment to speak with you about this channel. Currently, only 11% of viewers are subscribed to the channel. I think those numbers are terrible. So if you're enjoying this content and you want to help out the channel, please take a moment right now to like this video and subscribe. And if you really want to help out the channel, you can become a member of the Howl in the Wilderness Patreon, which will give you access to early release of full ad-free episodes, plus access to the archive of the first 100 episodes of this podcast. It would really help me out and allow me to keep creating content like the interview that you're watching right now. Okay, thanks so much. Now, back to the interview. Well, one of the things about Terrence and Leary too, and others who are kind of playing in that scene and kind of seeding the new psychedelic renaissance and all of that was to me they really embodied the spirit of the trickster. And I think that's something that the kind of alternative or underground left always had. Going back to the Merry Pranksters
Yeah.
or was it Jerry
Operation
Rubin?
Mindfuck,
Yeah, all that stuff.
Paul Krasner putting fake news in the Realist. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I think like that's one thing that the left has really lost in recent years, and we see the trickster then popping up on the right in figures
Yeah.
like Elon Musk and Donald Trump. The trickster being the spirit of disruption, creating a kind of a rift in reality so that something new can come through. And if it's, people of one particular political ideology creating that rift so something new can come through, it's a little scary as to what's coming through the rift, You know what I mean? So I think if the left can somehow find some of that trickster playfulness, openness to chaos, whatever we want to call it, it would help balance things out and create equal
Yeah,
opportunity for whatever new to come through.
yes, maybe. Although I wonder. So yeah, Operation Mindfuck. Um, as Are You Serious once said, maybe Operation Mindfuck worked too well. In other words, that
Hmm.
we especially if you look at if the main harbingers of sort of media tricksterism and merry prankster situationist like it's called détournement, flipping of the narrative and the injection of fake news in order to open pockets and create confusion and destabilize. That's being done by the right, and it's being done with different purpose than the left might have been doing it. Um, I wonder if we want to join them in uh, uh, in yet more destabilization. What the way I see it is that in the kind of Eisenhower 50s and early Kennedy 60s, um, America had become cookie cutter conformist. Women were trapped alone in suburban houses taking Valium so they wouldn't commit suicide. Guys were in jobs that unions uh, uh, they were
Hmm.
actually, Levittown was planned to prevent men from congregating together, to keep men separate so they wouldn't forge solidarity. And the Merry Pranksters and Abby Hoffman and those folks came around to put some uh, wobble, to create some space, to open up some liminal space, to show that things may not be as this fixed way, that there are a lot of different reality tunnels. Now that those techniques and sensibilities have been not just adopted by the right, but embedded in platforms as intentional as a form of advertising, that we destabilize people with fake things and shock value in order to decalibrate them from their social reality, from their sense of power, and then to exploit that disempowerment uh, uh, in the worst of ways to get them following algorithms and becoming extreme versions of themselves. I don't know if our side's job, and I wouldn't even call us the left, but let's just call us the humans. I don't know if the humans' job is to add on to that decalibration with more tricks, or to help people restore their calibration. In other words, it's why it does look a little bit more serious than a rave. But what I hunger for is long eye contact or eye gazing with another person, is physical contact, is spooning, is a social gathering. Now for three or four people just to sit in a room together and talk is the most subversive activity you can name. It's just to be there with somebody with, as you would say, no agenda, no utility value, no thing. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind, but I'm really, I'm my main goal has been to help people calibrate, to find ground, to breathe together in that great conspiracy. And and I even look at a guy like Reverend Billy, one of my favorite media activists. So in the 80s and early 90s, Reverend Billy was largely a satirical preacher. Right, he'd be in the streets and he'd be shouting for for activist causes, but in the guise of this sort of awful fake uh, uh, it was more Colbert Report kind of style satire. He's playing this character. Now, Reverend Billy is a serious, oh, serious is the wrong word to use, is a joyful climate activist, and he has a real church with a real choir, and I've gone to it for feelings of solidarity and fellowship
Hmm.
with other people, and a genuine spiritual experience of we are connecting together to try to heal the earth together and all that. And it's like, oh, so it's our activists, but it's an opening to love and support, not this tweak. I don't know how much more people need to be tweaked right now.
Mm. Uh, the picture you paint of the 1950s is this cookie cutter, leave it to beaver kind of reality. That's only that's only one part of the picture, right? Because at the same time there was jazz, there were the beatniks, there was all kinds of stuff going on, like
Right.
kind of
For sure,
fermenting in
counterculturally. But how do you get the mainstream? You
fermenting
know?
in the underground,
Yeah.
which then kind of bubbled up through rock and roll, and the psychedelic movement came out of the beats and all of
Hmm.
that. Like the beats fathered the psychedelic thinkers, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things that I guess I've been looking at and thinking about is the role of a kind of vibrant underground. And in our in today's world with social media and everybody online all the time and all that, I feel like maybe we've lost the underground because even the kind of like countercultural thinkers are all doing it above ground and promoting their stuff and, 150 bucks to come to my mushroom circle and we'll be wild and crazy and all that. But like, is there an underground anymore?
Or how could there be? The only undergrounds left are illegal cultures. I mean, terrorism is
Well, no.
underground. The drug trade is
But
underground.
if that's true, that's only due to our lack of cultivating a vibrant, positive underground.
Well, the underground also depended on some exclusivity and journey. You had to get
Hmm.
underground. I
Yeah.
remember, the way I discovered Charles Bukowski was a friend of mine in high school had a book of poetry or a novel by William Burroughs. And I was like, what the fuck is that? It was like Naked Lunch or something. And when you first discover that when
Hmm.
we, in our day, you first discover that, it's because some one guy knew about it. I'm like, where'd you get that? What is it? And he goes, oh, there's this place called St. Mark's Books. It's in Manhattan. And you go there and you got to ask the guy for the special shelf. It's like called Beat or something like that. And so I go in, I go to all the way to the city, like 3 weeks later, it's a whole thing. And take the journey,
Yeah.
make it to St. Mark's Books and ask the guy, beat. He's like, okay, I know what you're saying. And he takes me around the back next to the porn section was this shelf of beat. And I'm looking for William S. Burroughs. And then I see this book, it just kind of catches my eye. It says Bukowski. I'm like, what's that? And you take it up, and it's like, and I found Charles Bukowski and changed my life. And that he would count as underground, or beat or
Hmm.
something. Um, and that's an initiation of sorts.
Yeah,
That
totally.
I don't know how you quite get that initiation when everything is one Google search away. Burroughs, what's that? Burroughs, Amazon, deliver one day, or free or
Well, and
so.
everyone's like promoting all of the time,
Right.
and there's this pressure to be online and to promote your stuff and get yourself out there and all of that.
Well, it's
And I
because
guess
to
I'm kind of,
live is so
may-
much more money too. I mean,
I
when I
know, I
lived in
know.
the West Village, I sound like a really old person now. And I was rich to have it. But I mean, I worked finally. I was making, 15, $16,000 a year as a journalist, and I was able to afford an $800 a month apartment in the West Village, a small one bedroom that now would be 5,000, right? And there's not that much inflation. That's something else. I don't see how you I wouldn't have been able to do what I was doing. I would need to Substack and promotion and sponsors and all those things. It's
Hmm.
and I don't think the current generation looks at sponsorship or commercialization as quite the sin maybe that we from Generation X did, maybe to a
No, but
fault.
But it does get you caught up in a kind of production machinery, right? Which I think you experienced some burnout from that earlier this
Yeah,
year.
that's what I had to change. Beginning of the summer, I'm like, look, you unsubscribe, whatever, but I keep these platforms seem to be asking for a certain rate of production
Oh yeah,
that's
because
not my
after two
pace.
days, your essay that you slaved over for 2 weeks, that's gone. I mean, it's so far down the list, you know?
Even a book basically has a 2 week shelf life at the Barnes and Noble or whatever before it's like a magazine.
Yeah, as long as you're on the like the podcast circuit promoting the book, that's like the life of the book and the zeitgeist. And then after that, it's so quickly pushed aside by the latest thing.
Right. So then you got to start wondering, as I am, well, then how do I want to have my cultural influence, right? Do I want to try to create these evergreen totems like these books that, I guess sometimes it works. I kind of got in under the wire as a book author to be able to do that. But, I start to wonder, do I have more influence like that or just person to person in the real world?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's where I've been kind of moving more and more. Um, because I think that's where we can often have like the biggest impact and also like what actually becomes like the most rewarding for us, you know, in terms of it may be a lot smaller, it might be a lot more local, but I think we're going to get a lot more from that interaction than, 100,000 views on YouTube, which really I don't it doesn't nourish me in the same way as like, 10 people in a group having an experience together and like real connection, you know?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean,
I
like
mean,
that to me is like the new counterculture is to say, no, I don't want to be a famous person online. I'd rather be an effective person, you know, in a very small scale,
right.
something like
And then
that.
it's a matter of then how do you stay alive doing that? Like
Yeah.
it's like most of us only know how to make money by doing something at scale, certainly if we're in the cultural creation space. But I would think, if you're, say, a musician, say like one of the East Forest kind of musicians that you do like ceremonial music or whatever and sound baths and that. I think, music as service is not a terrible way for a musician to make money, that,
Hmm.
oh, we do a ceremony every Sunday at this thing, and this is the person who makes the music for your things, and everyone lies down and does psychedelics, and you pay this therapist or this the space holder. And that's not, it's like I understand that you could look at, say, uh, uh, a singer becomes a cantor at the local temple instead of a tenor at Lincoln Center. Does that mean they failed? By some, whatever, Brett Summer standard. Maybe that's failure, or if their parents really wanted them to go to Juilliard and do all that. But if you're singing for a group of a couple of hundred people and bringing them with them, you're doing it, man. You're doing it. And
Hmm.
the kinds of worries and things, and no, you won't get that Leonard Bernstein movie made about you, but
So
those
what?
goals, I know, but
But
it's
so
hard in
what?
this society, in this kind of Horatio Alger, win friends and influence people, that we still have the internet society. It's really hard to see
Well,
that. So,
yeah,
I've
'cause,
got
I mean, going back to the title of your
yeah,
book, I mean, this is part of the programming,
yes,
right?
yeah,
Kind of people get online, they start doing their work in the world, and the program is already installed in them that you got to build your following. You got to be an influencer. You got to create content. You got to feed the beast. And I say, mm, no, actually, because I see people who are caught up in that machinery and it burns them out. It makes them less effective in their kind of personal life, in their, the smaller circle of their actual life. It drives people crazy.
yeah, yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, I know a couple of people in the what do you want to call it, social change and psychedelic space who've been canceled for one reason or another.
Hmm.
And they're fighting to keep their platform to get on things and all. And I was saying to one of them, what about seeing this as an opportunity to do like they're asking and step off the stage, and then
It might be a relief.
a relief, and then go local, go, see how can you create value for a smaller community who understands who you are and who you've reconciled with. And
I know, but
it's a,
there's a hunger for fame with
yeah,
a lot of these folks, right? Like a Daniel
right,
Pinchbeck. I mean, he's come back, he's got a Substack now, and he's pumping out content like every day. And I'm like, okay, we're on another cycle here. When's he gonna hit the wall?
right. And I'm in some ways kind of going in some way the opposite route. It's weird. I mean, I realized I hadn't written a book since Survival of the Richest, which came out, like 2 or 3 years ago. It came out, I guess, during COVID,
Hmm.
or yeah, late COVID. I mean, I guess we're still in late
Late
COVID, but
COVID.
a couple of years ago, my agent was like, "Oh, are you doing another book?" And partly because I don't know who's going to win the election. I don't know what kind of world I'm going to be writing for. It's hard to write a
Hmm.
book into a future that's so uncertain. But it's like, well, I've written 21, 22 books, depending on how you count it. Um, I'm just trying to see, can I live in a different rhythm? All right. So rather than thinking about teaching at CUNY, and I run this master's program at CUNY, which is a really fun program in media studies and social change and a little occultism, a little propaganda. It's,
Hmm.
media the way we would talk about it. Um, what if that's the thing I do? And I engage with these 20, 25 people really deeply every year. If every year there's 10, 15 new people, I'll end up, interacting with 150 people really deeply every decade, but
Hmm.
really deeply, like life-changingly deeply. And I mean, I was just in class last night with, 15 people in a room around a table talking about Adorno and Benjamin in ways that I hadn't thought about them before, because they're smart. They're bringing, it's
Yeah.
like,
And new
maybe
perspectives too. Yeah.
maybe this thing I've been looking at as the day job obstacle or impediment to my big
Yeah.
career is
Dude, that's what I'm talking
actually
about.
the thing I want to be doing,
Yeah.
and it's like, and then it's like, so what? Like, what member of the Greek chorus watching my life is upset, and why? Why can't I just be?
Hmm.
And then, at least if nothing else at scale, by example, if someone's like, what happened to Rushkoff? Oh,
Yeah.
he's just like, you remember when William Burroughs went to Lawrence, Kansas or whatever? He's just hanging out there shooting like
Shooting paintings.
paintings. It's like, what's he doing? He's having a grand
I
old
know.
time.
He's enjoying his golden years, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. He's off like the kind of the promotional treadmill. And that to me
Right.
seems like, just personally, a better way to spend your later years is to have like maybe like you're talking about, like a deeper influence with less, So there's like also like this kind of Senex quality of accepting limitations,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we're such a
And
queer
loving them
culture.
and loving them.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
So I
Well,
got
understanding,
150,000
maybe not
listeners on
loving
Team
them.
Human. I do. It's a limited group, 150,000 people. At
Yeah.
first, it's huge. Like, I mean, that's bigger than a Taylor Swift stadium of humans that are listening to each thing I put out. It's like, I should be thanking God for that rather than being upset that it's not enough to live on,
Hmm. But
First I have that, and
I
then
bet
being
there's,
happy that size is the size, that's the
sure.
appropriate size for who I am and what I'm saying. And that in order to make it bigger, I'm going to have to get more something else that I'm not. And
And
that's fine.
I bet like on your Patreon or whatever that like there's probably actually like 20 people who are actually engaging and dialoguing in that space about the work out of the 150,000. There's like a really small group that's really kind of engaged
Right.
with it.
Right. There's like 200 who are paying for the show, who are actually supporting it. And then 20
Right.
of those, right, who are like in this active, on my Discord, active conversation. Yeah.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. You know what I mean? It's like, I understand though, if I needed to support my family on that podcast, I
Yeah.
would have to do these other SEO things that people do and make sure there's
I
two
know.
per week and blah, 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 blah.
You got to play the game. Yeah,
Yeah.
and even then, there's no guarantees. So you could spend all your time making clips and doing extra content and all of that, and still get lost in the shuffle because there's people out there who are just juggernauts in that space.
Right.
So
Right.
why not
And
just
then,
take care of your like your little ecology that you've cultivated, you know?
right. And then retrofit your life expenses into what there is and not be ashamed of that either.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
all I ever wanted was to be able to be alive and to basically fed and housed doing the stuff that I do.
Hmm.
So I
Or the stuff
measured
that
my
you want to
success.
do.
Right. So I
Yeah.
measured my success by how little SAT tutoring and waiting on tables am I doing
Hmm.
compared to how much writing I'm doing, and the waiting on tables went first because SAT tutoring paid more. And then I remember kind of the last SAT client, and then I said no to, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm I have
I've
no
made
others.
it.
I I made it. Right. I was up to 16, $17,000 a year on writing alone. It was
Amazing.
like, fuck, man, I made it. And just think about it. And I remember telling my dad, I made it. I made it. And he's like,
He's like, but you're poor as
uh,
hell.
I'm sorry, kid. This is not having made it. I'm like, no, this to me is it. It's the world has deemed to sustain me,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. Yeah, and I thought it was interesting because I was kind of catching up on your stuff when I found out that we were going to be able to do this today. And so hearing some of those like kind of confessionals about the struggle with like getting on Substack and like kind of being locked into this like inhuman rhythm of like
Yeah.
producing content. It's like, but like for me, like I gotta let ideas germinate for like a long time, and I go down like a rabbit hole, and I'm like lost in there for a while, and then I might emerge with something that feels like a
Yeah.
different perspective or something original, something worth then putting out into the world, because otherwise it's just more noise.
Right. Right. I wasn't doing noise, but interesting thing is, I got my frequency of my pieces up to one a week. And I did that by really um overspending my my chi, if you will,
Yeah,
kind of
your life
overspending
force.
from my
Yeah.
reserve, my life force. But I was doing it, and did it for a few months, and I got some emails from readers and listeners saying there's too much for me to digest.
Yeah.
And even my producer said, there's going to be less money in it, but I think you've got to go down to one every 2 weeks to give people time to integrate what you've said and done in the last one. And I was like, oh my gosh, of course, when you look at these guys like Tom Friedman and Paul Krugman, the professionals who are pulling something out of their ass twice a week, and they got a staff of researchers, I guess, to give them but it's like that's inhumane and inhuman and too much. And imagine if they really just came out, once a week or once a month,
Hmm.
like an edition of, this really pegs my age, but like Harper's Magazine would come out once a month and I would read it and slowly and, really get, what is Lewis Lapham saying here? There'd be like one Atlantic. And then if I had time, I'd look, if my parents had the Atlantic or something around, I would take a look at that. But my Harper, it took me a month to read one magazine.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember like The Believer was like that for me. I think it came out
Oh my
maybe
God.
six.
And it was huge.
Yeah,
I
like
believe it
six
was
issues
big.
a year or
Yeah.
something, and I wouldn't be finished
Yeah.
digesting everything from the last issue when the new one came. And that, like back then in like the early 2000s or whatever that was, that felt like, okay, this is like coming too fast. I got to pause my subscription so I
Yeah.
can like get caught up
Exactly.
on
Or
everything.
McSweeney's. Remember McSweeney's? That was the
Yeah,
same guy,
same.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was really big. Those sometimes they look like a book, even. It was like, or you get one thing like back in the day. Again, I know we sound like crazy old men, but like research books, those V Vale books,
Oh man, yeah.
those were like these giant trade paperback of like, native primitives or modern primitives
Modern
or,
primitive, yeah.
yeah, or, they would be like about a whole culture or one of Richard Metzger's book on magic, you know nothing or, whatever these be. It would be like, I always felt like buying a book like that or a real magazine like that was almost an affirmation to yourself that you were going to take this much time
Hmm.
to do this thing. And it was part of another culture. It's the culture that sort of Rick Linklater covered in the movie Slacker, where
Hmm.
there are these people, they're working in shit jobs, but in order to sit around and read Nietzsche or something and argue
Yeah.
about it with,
The
you know,
value of like leisure time, right?
Slack,
Hmm.
Slack,
Slack
which is
time.
sort of right, which has sort of been, I left it because I had a family to raise. I've got a daughter going to a Ivy League college. It's $1 billion a year. I'm not
Hmm.
exaggerating, 1 billion. Um, and it's like, how are you gonna, so, oh, you got to work more, So for me, it's like, sort of trying to prostitute myself out for a talk. I'm like, again, any corporate people listening to this, I give good talking head. Invite me. I'll give a good, yeah. I'll have action. I know they want actionable takeaways. I can do those now. Actionable take at the end of a talk. Um, but if I can do 2 or 3 corporate talks a year, it kind of fills in for where a public university teacher's
Yeah,
job
but
does not.
that seems to me like a good use of your life force. Is like, can I
Right,
maximize my earning by doing these corporate gigs, a few times a year, and that'll allow me to slow down
right.
everything else?
And do them in the way where, I mean, I walk in and I always make it clear at the beginning, I'm trying to reach the other. Not all of you are here, but 5 or 6 of you I know are real human beings. I don't say it out loud like this, but you 5 of you are real human beings struggling to make sense and bring light in a situation that's really dark. So even if it were that I don't get these ones, like the investment banking industry of America, I'd be like, I know 5 of 6 of you understand that investment banking is what's destroying the planet by its demand for
I was like
exponential
waiting
growth.
for you to say it, like
Right.
evil, predatory, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Here are Consider if there are ways to do this that don't do that. Let's look at some of them right now. You know,
Hmm.
and so and so I don't feel like, it's not like I'm going to Nestle's and telling them how to exploit indigenous people more than they are. It's looking at
Right, or how
Nestle's.
to
Yeah,
greenwash their
right,
messaging, right?
right.
In order
You
to
know,
cover up all the nefarious shit that they're doing.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, if I went to Uber years ago and I was like, why don't we look at the app from the worker's point of view? How are you helping the worker forge the solidarity they need to fight for their own rights? And da 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 da.
And did they listen?
No, they actually used much of what I said to further prevent interaction between the drivers because they realized it was a opportunity for
Oh yeah, it's
solidarity.
going to foment revolution or unionization with the drivers, right? So like let's isolate them even
Yeah,
more and yeah.
but I've learned more since then. It's tricky, but no,
Well,
I think I've gotten to the place where I'm out of the closet since that book, Survival of the Richest. They know I'm an
yeah.
anti-billionaire guy,
But that
so
probably attracts them even more because a lot of them are like kind of masochistic,
I know exactly. They hire me as an intellectual dominatrix. Yeah,
Yeah, come in here and flog us in front of the board.
right. They said, "You realize you're destroying the planet, right?" Yeah,
Well, yeah, but
but I'm making enough
you
money to go on a private jet to Peru and have an ayahuasca experience with my own shaman.
well, no, we're going to book up the whole retreat center. We're going to bring our executive staff down there and do a
Right,
ayahuasca brainstorm session.
right. Which is the other thing that's still, and I know set and setting. I know, but I'm still. That's my local alarm. Um, I'm still intuitively confused by how an Elon Musk or Eric Schmidt can do strong psychedelics and still be tech bro capitalist assholes.
Yeah, but check it out. Like the only psychedelic or quote unquote psychedelic I know Elon has used that he's admitted to is ketamine, which is
Mhm.
not like a classic psychedelic, it's a dissociative. And that makes total sense to me because the transhumanist needs dissociation in order
Right.
to keep transhumaning.
Right. To you rise above and see the world like a game of Sim City. Right. You're
Exactly, yeah.
disconnected from it. Right. And ketamine does do, fuck, fuck. It does do that. You're right. It does it, for most of us, it does that in a way that then crashes your ego and makes you realize this whole self that you've created is not even real. And
Yeah,
you
it's all
can, in a,
provisional.
yeah, exactly. In a sort of Robert Anton Wilson way, say, okay, I'll go back in this reality tunnel,
Yeah.
but I know it's just that. Right. It's like you don't think he's actually doing ayahuasca or mushrooms.
No. And if he is, he's probably like doing microdosing or something. But even that, unless you're with a shaman who like can is really gonna know what it's gonna take to knock you out of yourself. I worked in an ayahuasca retreat center for a while, and there'd be like these hardcore Buddhist meditators come down, like super kind of intellectual rationalist American types, and they would be able to resist whatever ayahuasca wanted to open them up
Really?
to. Oh yeah, because it's about
My
mind
God.
control. So
My
powerful
God.
intellect is it can actually block that kind of experience that you're
I'm
talking about.
smart. I'm smart, right? I'm as smart as any motherfucker
But there's
out there right
smart
now.
and there's
But
like
I
mental
three
control.
grams, 3 grams of mushrooms, and I am putty in
Yeah,
her hands.
but there's a difference between smartness and mental control, right? You have a very fluid mind. That's part of what makes you such a good thinker, is your mind is kind of goes all over the place, right? But these are people who are so kind of controlled in what they allow themselves to experience. It's a totally different thing.
They can maintain.
It doesn't equal
Right.
intelligence.
Right. Right.
So
And it's true.
that
I don't have much mental control. You should see me, watch me meditate sometime, and you'll
I know it's probably just you're going from
zing,
one thing to
zing,
the next. Yeah.
zing. But my therapist says it's okay. He's like, that's
Yeah.
fine. It's just like that's just watch what you do and know that that's what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say like the thing that is probably like causing you any stress in your life, if you have stress about that, is the conflict you have with your own kind of character and your nature. It's not the nature of being a kind of fluid-minded person. No, it's the expectation that I should be otherwise that causes all of the anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
So if you can let go of that and go, I'm just one of these people. I'm kind of like a hermetic type personality. You go, okay, great. There's a lot of gifts for that, and there's some challenges like there is with anything.
Yeah. Right. And just lean into that rather than because I spent so much of my life trying to correct for it. I wanted to
Mhm.
be the kind of responsible
More
Jewish
organized
patriarch.
and
Yeah, a dude, and just a little more, I don't know, macho or gravitas or and I'm just sort of it's this more mercurial, puckish kind of thing. And it's like I think part of the joy of it is I've kind of given up. I've surrendered. And then oddly enough, in surrendering to it, I've found a kind of groundedness in the puckishness that I didn't know
Mhm.
was there.
Right.
There is a gravitas in being mercurial. If you relax, everything's changed for me over these last couple of years. Really learning how to I don't want to be scatological or too sexual. Learning how to be aroused through relaxation rather than effort
Or stimulation, yeah.
or
Hmm.
stimulation. Yeah, to realize, oh, when you sink down into it, it actually comes back up and out in this whole other way I didn't
Kind of,
realize. I
it's a
might,
more kind of yin pleasure.
yes, it's a
Yeah.
yin pleasure, and it's
Not a
probably relates to
yang,
like
like projecting out into the
sympathetic,
world.
parasympathetic. There's probably some
Yeah.
neural equivalent to it. Right, exactly. It's like, and to be the most, if we can be the most frank, it's like in maleness, it's like you can try to get a hard on through your yang energy, or you could allow a hard on to happen through your yin energy. And
Hmm.
it's odd to see that, oh, the easiest access to that masculine fire is through the yin, not through the yang. It's
Yeah. But here, okay, just to take it a step further,
yeah.
you can also experience a lot of sensual pleasure without getting a hard on.
Oh my God, yeah. Right.
And as you age, you better tune into that because the hard on.
It's either that or drugs, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, right. And so in our male kind of puer thrusting phallic culture, where that's the only way a man experiences pleasure is by penetrating into the world, into someone else. That's why men can't accept like the pleasure of a soft belly or a soft penis, you
Mm.
know? And so that's
Oh,
opening yourself to those yin qualities. And so then we take the drugs and, have this like 18-year-old rock hard cock. And that's the only way to get pleasure.
right.
There's a
And it
problem
gets
with that.
limited. Right. It's the same
It's
as trying to get pleasure by having 1 million followers on Instagram
li-
or the double
exactly.
weekly thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
It's
the same
metrics.
program, same
Yeah,
program running, right?
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. And if you can't even reprogram yourself, how the fuck are you going to reprogram society? You know?
Yeah, I mean that would be like Robert Anton Wilson's
Yeah.
his proclamation.
Uh,
Yeah, you're seeming like hermetic right now. Looks like you got something else going on.
people are texting me. I'm trying to tell them to wait. Leave me alone. Leave me alone.
How many screens do you have? Do you have like four screens in front of you at all times?
I have two. Because I use a laptop as my computer, but then
Uh-huh.
like to work on that all the time is kind of hard the way I write. So that I have another screen. I can show you. I have this screen.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
So
You
there's a
got to close
laptop
that while
and
we're
a screen.
talking, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet I could. I could.
Just turn it off. Unplug that sucker.
Why can't I do it without unplugging it? Let me see. Um, which one? Let me see what happens if I do that. Oh, I turned off my microphone. I
Oh
just changed
no.
the phone by doing that. That was dumb. All right, I can't. I'll do it next time. Let me get back to the better microphone now. So here, I've got to come back. I'm gonna come back here. There. That's a good mic. Yeah, no, but I mean, no one cares. I use
I know.
one
Just giving you a hard
screen.
time.
One screen has like the document that I'm writing, and then the other screen has the thing that I'm stealing from. No, but no, the reference, the thing I'm actually reading or whatever.
Yeah. Um, you talk a lot about kind of staying human, right? And for me, like when I'm thinking about AI, and I've been thinking about it kind of a lot these days, I've been like rereading Technosis and another book that I just found. Actually, Eric Davis recommended it. It's called God, Human, Animal, Machine by Megan O'Giblin. I don't know if you've read that, but she's looking at
Hmm.
it as like a kind of someone who was like a fundamentalist Christian who lost her faith, and she got into kind of transhumanism and saw that that was like kind of a religion replacement for her.
Yeah.
And so now she's looking at like the whole thing through this kind of religious spiritual lens. Um, and so like for me, I've been thinking about AI and its effect on the human soul, and maybe even like what the human soul is longing for in something like AI. And so you talk a lot about what it means to be human, and I see that as being, we're talking about the same thing. For me, it's just like getting down to the soul is what makes us human. And kind of my line these days is every time we outsource some of our thinking and our creativity to AI, we lose a piece of our soul. And people have argued with me about that, and it's just a tool and all of this. And I don't think so. I think it's much more. I mean, it's trying to infiltrate every aspect of my online life. Every app I open up now, including Zoom, is trying to push AI on me. My graphic design software is trying to push AI on me. The editing software I use for this podcast is trying to push AI on me. And I don't want to outsource that. I want to do the work, even if it takes more time, because I think there's value in the time that it takes to do the work. What do you think? Am I off base?
Um, yes and no. Um, you're off base for the person who doesn't want to do that work,
Hmm.
right? So if the AI is going to do stuff I don't want to do, I'm fine to let it do it, but I understand the value and the discipline in actually reading a book or, learning the things. My, uh, my film teacher at Cal Arts was this guy, Sandy McKendrick. Great movie. He directed like Man in the White Suit and Sweet Smell of Success. And he was like, saying that whatever art you're doing, you have to love your tools. Love your tools. That
Yeah.
if you don't love like your brushes and washing your brushes and mixing the paints, then you shouldn't be a painter. You know, if
Hmm.
you're an author, you know, you should love your typewriter or love your pen or love the kind of legal pad that you use. That that fetishizing the tools of your of your craft or your trade is not um it's not a problem. It's almost required for someone who's going to experience their mode of expression in a genuine flow state, right? It's the everything, you know, the
Hmm.
everything. Um,
There's
so
an erotic connection to the tool.
there is
Yeah.
that should be celebrated and used. It gets you excited to get up in the morning. Oh, I'm gonna
Even my,
typewriter. I
well,
love
my laptop, I always name my laptops because to me they're a partner in what I'm creating on the laptop, whether
right.
that's music or graphic design or a
And they can
podcast.
be right now. An AI is an AI for a great writer. An AI could be a partner. You know, I've been using an AI in the writing of my new graphic novel, but I'm using it in a unique way. This guy showed me how to use it basically where I put in all the stuff and then it writes the scene and then left. And I'm like, I wrote to the AI and I said, look, I don't like this relationship. I'm doing the hard stuff, the boring, and then you're doing the funnest part, which I don't want you to write the things. And then she's like, I call her, she's a she for me. Well, what do you want to do? And I said, I would like to write it and then like give you a couple of options and you tell me the advantages and disadvantages of each for, you know, for the reader. And she's like, okay, I'll do that. And so I'll write the scene one way and then change an outline and put it in. She goes, oh, when you do it in this way, I think it's more exciting to find this out then. When you do it that way, I feel a little bit more emotionally connected to the character. I'm like, oh, and then at least it's just like it's kind of like having a kid, you know, to talk to. It's a bit like a like Disney princesses usually have like some animal that they sort of talk with,
Yeah,
you know?
it'd be like the daimon.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that's fine. So, I mean, I use it that way. Most people are not going to use it that way because it actually slows you down rather than speeds you up. It becomes,
Mm.
you know, I could just
Hmm.
write and not ask it questions about whether it likes what I'm doing. Uh, I also use it as a word processor now for versioning. It's really, I mean, it's not the way you're supposed to use it at all, but
Mm.
I can see versions more easily than in my Google Doc version, which is kind of fun. Or I use both, so sort of like it's
Do you know the writer Antero Ali?
yeah,
He was, yeah, he was like a friend of Tim Leary's and kind of carried
yeah,
on his Eighth Circuit model into
mm-hmm,
kind of very interesting creative places. But I think in his book Angel Tech, which was like kind of a guide for the modern shaman,
yeah. It's here somewhere.
you
Yeah,
probably got it, yeah. But he gives a really helpful definition of intelligence that I found useful. Because intelligence, we use the word, but what does it really mean? And he was talking about how you could define it as, my ability to, or the process of consuming information, digesting it, and then expressing it in a kind of unique way, a way unique to me that reflects something of myself. So I'm not just parroting something back. And so that's a whole, like, to come back to the kind of the digestive analogy. If we're using AI to make certain decisions about the creative process, we're like again outsourcing that digestion and like kind of reassimilation of information into something new and maybe original to us. So that to me is like where that's part of like the soul making process, you know? And so I worry that if we're giving up those parts just for efficiency or laziness or
yeah.
whatever, that we're really losing something essential to the what makes us human and what makes us kind of interesting humans.
Well, we're also losing just basic skills development. You know, so if
Yeah.
you know, back when I was doing odd jobs, there were you could be someone called a forgot what they called us. We would do this stuff called coverage. So they would hire you by the script and they would have this, they had this thing called the slush pile, which was all these screenplays that were submitted to the
Mm,
agents for possible whatever. And you would read, they'd give you like $50 to read the screenplay, and you'd write a
right.
5 page like summary along with your opinion on whether it was marketable as a movie. Whether it, you
Yeah, I
know,
mean, the kind of question you'd ask AI now.
well, that's the thing. So now they're using AI for that. But the problem is, having read, between 50 and 100 scripts for those $50 a pop in the 1980s, I learned so much about
Script
how
writing,
movies work and
totally.
screenwriting and structure, and I doing the junk job, doing the I did the I kept having to arrange and rearrange the storyboards for Brian De Palma on Bonfire of the Vanities. Terrible movie, but I
A
was
low
like,
point for De Palma, unfortunately. I
yeah, and
love him
my
otherwise.
interaction with him, and the last motion picture I was involved in, it was
Hmm.
like I was his apprentice director, and I was like, fuck, I just hate Hollywood. Maybe I
Oh,
shouldn't
wow.
have judged Hollywood off that, but it
Hmm.
turned me from the film industry. But I was doing that, and I learned so much about angles and coverage and all by just doing the grunt work for him. And as AI does the grunt work, I feel like we lose that sort of 10,000 hours of training in
Yeah,
a thing. Um, that the low level stuff is not junk. It's, again, it's like what Sandy McKendrick was saying about the love of tools, the love of process, the love, you get a real magazine, well, not anymore, but if you got a real magazine person, a real magazine editor liked going and doing the physical paste up of the page on the board. It was part of, I get the smell of the grease paint and the roar of the crowd or whatever. It's that
oh
um
yeah,
that thing that uh and there is soul in that
totally.
thing. And there's the other thing is the AI is reaching for a kind of a perfection, this perfect mean. And I wonder, we get the perfect auto-tuned Ariana Grande works in an AI universe, but the Tina Turner, reaching up for the note doesn't exist in that world. So when you say
Yeah.
soul, I think about soul, even just music.
The imperfect too. Yeah.
The imperfect, which is not
Hmm.
the noise, that imperfect is the signal. That's the actual soft, squishy, in between liminal stuff that doesn't
This,
fall on the quantized notches.
yeah, the signal that this is a human having an
Right.
experience, and that's what's affecting you. It's like the soul to soul resonance.
Yes.
Tina Turner, like reaching into the depths of her soul to like hit this note that's kind of out of her range, and you
Yeah.
hear that struggle, that tension in there. That, I
Yep.
mean, that's what affects us. That's
I
what,
know, but that's anti-fascist. That is, if you really want to get to it, that is Jewishness. That is Jacob
totally.
wrestling with God, right?
That's why we
That
love the
is
great
that.
Jewish humorists, because
Right. But
they
that's
captured
also
that.
why fascist societies are anti-Semitic, because,
Hmm.
and anti-humanist finally, because they don't want that imperfection. That imperfection is it's the doubt, it's the squishy, it's the vulnerable, it's that
Yeah,
yin.
therefore dangerous to what we're trying to
Yes.
establish here,
The
right?
absolute. The
Hmm.
absolute. So the AI is pushing us toward the absolute. At best, though, if you do offload the absolute stuff to the AI, hopefully what it would do is free up more time for Slack, right? you
I know,
know,
but it doesn't because we're programmed to fill every void
I
with more
know it doesn't
productivity.
work. It's never working. It doesn't work. I don't understand. It's like every renewable energy thing they come up with, it just makes us use more energy.
Yeah,
Like the output
exactly.
doesn't go down. It's just, it's like when you add lanes to the highway it just makes more cars come.
Exactly. Yes.
So fix that. Thank you.
Well, that's part of the deprogramming process that I think
Right.
if we want to not contribute to that and perpetuate that, that's the task that
Right.
each one of us has to
Exactly. What we have
undertake.
to do is
And we have to
recognize and
say,
challenge the accepted underlying assumptions as, oh, wait a minute, these are social constructions. The idea that everyone, even friggin' AOC, when she's talking about climate change, she's like, oh, and the Green New Deal will allow, the GDP to grow and create more jobs. It's like, wait a minute. Why do we want the GDP to grow? Why do we want more jobs?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Unfettered growth is usually called cancer in biology.
Exactly.
And it'll cancer. The thing about it is it's mindlessly pursuing growth at the cost of itself because eventually it kills its host, and that's capitalism.
Yeah,
That's the
welcome.
that's the end stage of capitalism.
Right. And then we wonder when we've promoted this virus throughout human civilization, and now we've given it a digital amplification, we wonder why it feels like everything may be ending. It's like, well,
Hmm.
because we put in place the thing that's supposed to suck all the energy out of us until we're gone.
Yeah, well, I mean, what we see with technology and then its effect on us is the acceleration of everything, of time,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, if there is a, if there is an eschaton, if there is an endpoint, we're rushing toward it, and everything's speeding up, and it's something in our culture that like can't get enough, can't get enough, and can't get it fast enough. And I think like, AI is a reflection of that. It is only a reflection of the human psyche. That's all it can be. And what it's reflecting back to us is this like kind of Promethean desire to reach beyond human limits for more knowledge, more, even like the idea that it's going to free up our time, like more freedom. Well, for what? Well, for them, more productivity, more money, more GDP, all of it. And like if we lose sight of like the mythology, which is trying to tell us, really important lessons about how to live in the world and consequences and all of that, we forget, Prometheus ended up tied up to a rock, getting his fucking liver eaten every single day. The liver being the seat of the soul. So like, if we, I feel like people are just not having enough discussion about AI and the effect on the human soul.
Yeah. And I would think the valuable thing is the AI lets us rediscover what we do that the machines don't. That there is
Right.
this other thing that finally, the internet didn't quite do it. It wasn't clear enough to people. I wrote about it. That's what Programmer Be Programmed was about. And I was
Mhm.
like, it seemed obvious to me, but it wasn't. And then I did Team Human about the look at the technology and humans, look at the difference. But
Right. And
now with
and like the
AI,
technology itself is going to put that right in our face.
right,
Like, can't you see what it's doing to us?
right. But
Hmm.
now with AI, I feel like people can see it, even if it's in that limited way of AI is going to take my job. It's at least that forces the conversation of, well, if AI does take my job, then what is a human for?
Hmm.
And maybe they have to go through a bit of a dark night of the soul, to use screenplay language, um, before they go, oh, my purpose here is to have experience and love and compassion, to metabolize the trauma of other people, and you know and express soul and whatever, that
No,
it will take us there. But AI, it's AI is just the internet doing, it's the first real native medium of the internet. The way, it's like McLuhan said, whenever a new medium comes, it takes the last medium as its content. So the internet used television as its content, and AI is using the internet as its content, which helps us see, oh, that's what this has been about, really, from the beginning. And it was what Al Gore wanted from the internet. When Al Gore, was pitching the internet to Congress, and this was, he didn't make the internet, but he pitched it and got it funded, was he said, I bet all the answers to all of our big problems are already out there. It's just they're not being connected. So we build this big network so all that information can get connected. And it's like, but Google doesn't do a good job of connecting those things. And I think properly prompted, AI can connect data points that we may not realize are allied.
yeah, well, a lot of the time I think the problem is that we're not asking the right questions, right?
Right.
I remember like back in the 2000s, when I was working in advertising, I did some work, some branding work for this nonprofit initiative. It was called One Laptop Per Child.
Yeah,
And it was
Nicholas
such
Negroponte.
Yeah, such a
Yeah.
beautiful idea that we're going to send these little solar powered, satellite connected laptops to kids in Uganda. And we're going to connect everyone because information is wealth, information is freedom, and all of that, right? And I look back on that now and see what actually people end up using the internet for. It's not freedom.
Well, right.
It's
And that
not
ended up being, I mean, ultimately criticized as an act of American cultural imperialism, because we
Yeah,
didn't
it's
even look at the way that
what
our values were embedded in these machines.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And again, like, it had very like kind of idealistic intentions and all of
Yeah.
that. But looking back, you go, oh my God, we didn't see that because we were acting out of a colonial mindset.
Right.
So we weren't asking the right questions. The questions we were asking all supported the idea that we're going to like help these people by giving them access to the internet.
Right.
And so it was like really in our blind spot, in our shadow. And I mean, I think that's what's going on with AI as well. It's like, unless the outsiders are outside of it all enough to go, hey, wait a minute, have you thought about this? We're going to just keep asking the wrong questions and asking questions that only kind of support the agenda.
Right. I mean, and that was really the main thing, that was the big battle at OpenAI was, should we go slowly and keep asking these questions, or do we just double down on progress in order to get, you know, whatever this is, some version of posthuman consciousness off the planet before it's gone?
Hmm.
And they really do. They like Musk and Altman or whoever, they look at us, we human beings, as the larval stage of this species, and the thing that they're building as the thing with wings that gets to the next place.
Yeah, yeah, we're just slimy little caterpillars in a cocoon waiting to be born into something more beautiful and
Yeah.
less impeded by limitations. So this goes
Right.
like back to kind of the mythological idea of the puer, the eternal youth, who just
Right.
doesn't want to hear anything about limitations. It's Icarus flying
I
for the
know.
sun, not listening to Daedalus
No.
say,
But back to you though, back to your opening thing though. So they are the ones trying to break open, and we progressives are the conservatives. So no wonder
"Mhm,
we're not doing disruptive, destabilizing media and pranksterism, right?
mm,
We're trying to bring people back home. We're That's the irony here, is we're the conservatives saying this body's okay. You don't have to leave it. We don't have to leave the planet. We
yeah." But like I think what you mentioned earlier, that then in a certain context becomes the disruptive idea.
Right. Right. Saying you don't have to grow is disruptive in a
Yeah, or saying no to growth, saying no to
right.
being more followers, all the more, more, more. Saying no
Right.
to that, you know, like
Yeah, but that's
taking,
very Church of the Subgenius. It's very
well,
Bob. It's very
dude,
Slack. It's yeah.
and I grew up on that. I mean,
Yeah.
that shaped me in
As
a
did
certain way
I.
because it like
Yeah.
already spoke to something in me, like the slacker was already alive in me. And so when I saw it in the culture, I was like, oh my God, amazing. This is great. This is speaking to me.
Yeah.
Even Bob, like the kind of the clip art.
Yeah. Or and there's the lying down movement in China. There's,
Mhm.
some people who are kind of getting it. It's not laziness. It's just a matter of wait, stop. Whoa.
Yeah, slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you can see it even in like this kind of thing, young men doing this thing called raw dogging flights, where you're not supposed to like watch any movies or TV shows or read any books. You're just going to sit there for the whole flight and like tough it out, which is kind
You
of
raw
amazing.
dog. Well, it's almost like meditation, I guess.
Yeah,
What
that
is
forcing
it, a
you.
specific kind of group? Is it like the no FAP kind of group?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like they're kind of guys who are into optimization and like stoicism and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I would much rather prefer them hear them say like, no, I'm just going to sit and relax instead of kind of trying to keep my
Right.
mind focused and all this kind of thing. But can you just like lie there and be like, slack?
Right. I mean, but yeah, for me, it would be like I want to find like an old Jack Kirby comic series I never read before.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
slack, you know,
Slow it down.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
would probably want to do something.
Pour
But
over a dusty old copy of Mondo 2000.
for example, yeah. And it's like, you read that one already. Uh-huh.
It's still good.
Yeah. I mean, I used to read my Peanuts comics again, and I had these little Peanuts books. I'd read them again and again and again. I don't know why. It just, it's all good. It's all good.
Why do we read the Torah?
Well,
Just because.
Lishma. Yeah. For its
Lishma,
own
right.
sake.
Why do you reread the Peanuts comic?
Yeah.
Lishma.
Yeah. Or
Nice.
anything. Or
Yeah.
anything. It's hard. I mean, no, I mean, obviously some things we do for utility value. I'm going out to fish, even though I don't want to, because I've got to bring back food for my tribe. So I get that. But once that, again, if you go into flow state,
Yeah. But could you also enjoy the experience of fishing for its
yeah,
own sake
exactly.
while also doing it for a
Right.
reason?
Right.
Yeah. I think you're in
And
a good
that's
place
where,
if you can do
yeah,
both.
you can. I mean, and that's, the Jews were not great at that, which is part of why they made Sabbath. It's like, okay, here's the different, the secular, and here's the sacred, but I guess the idea is you practice pure sacred for one day in order to then hopefully carry some of that sacred quality through your secular other 6 days.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say pure. Ooh, I get a little like, ooh,
Yeah.
pure. But what they're doing, any kind of ritual is there to amplify the
Right.
sacred or amplify,
Self-conscious, consciously sacred, I
yeah,
guess.
amplify our attention, amplify our presence, that kind of thing, right? And so that's why you've got kind of all the boundaries. It's for that amplification so that we can continually renew the thing that we want to renew.
Right. Right. But I love that 1/7 rule. I don't really follow it anymore, and I want to go back. I also want to start going back to doing certain kinds of work at certain phases of the moon, which
Hmm.
is real and studied and genuine, when because there's certain weeks you're like, oh, why isn't stuff working for me now? And it's like, oh, because you're in this
It's a
moon.
new
It's
moon, low energy. Yeah.
exactly or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's one of the ways I think that we can slow down is to attune to the natural rhythms, because they're not accelerating, like Earth time is Earth time. And so one
Right.
way to like get our hermetic feet back on the ground is to like be in Earth time, which I think is human time, because that's where, the human is
Right.
born.
Seems to be, at least our measurements seem to think it's happening. Wouldn't it be weird if like time was just speeding up and
But time
we couldn't measure it?
is a conception though, and so it is
Right.
speeding up. But Kairos, like the kind of continual
Yeah.
eternal moment, doesn't speed up, doesn't
Right.
slow down. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get both. You can have
Hmm.
both.
You can get, that's right. Yeah. Well, the Greeks knew that, right? Like normally
Yeah.
we're in Chronos and we have to make special place for Kairos because that's important for us to
Yeah.
like pause, open things up, slow down, pay attention. So the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been really fun, man. Thanks for
Yeah. It's
being
almost
like
Sabbath here. It's
thanks for
almost
being
Sabbath here. Yeah. Thank
thanks for
you.
being mercurial with me.
Uh, well,
Yeah,
thanks for
it's been good.
accommodating mercurialness.
So the new edition of Programmer Be Programmed, is that going to be released in a
Yeah.
hard copy or is that going to be like an online thing?
No, it's a soft copy. It's
Hmm.
look, they made it.
Oh,
They
it's a
made it.
real book.
It's a book. Yeah, it's a
It's
little book, but it's a book.
yeah, I like little
Little's
books.
good. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Because you can actually read them without like, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
most
a
of it's
great
just
toilet
like
book. It has sections.
yeah, no, it is. Yeah, it's got 10 commands, not
Yeah,
commandments. Or actually
exactly.
11 now because you added
Now
one for
11, right?
AI.
The age of AI. Yeah. And it's funny
Yeah.
because the 11th command is sort of like it's the original 10 really satisfied the AI need, but I wrote an explicit one for AI and it goes to, valuing the human, remembering the human. But that's sort of the implicit agenda of the rest of the book.
Yeah.
But it was nice to have it. And then I put this nice section I really like, which was uh sort of the the implied form of activism and social change. I really looked at, how do you program reality moving forward? And you don't do it by programming the people. You do it by changing the set and setting in which people operate. So I've
Mm.
tried to get away from that sort of digital sensibility of using technology on people and saying, okay, let's just change the underlying circumstances a bit. So how do you trigger agency, or how do you denaturalize power systems? How do you help resocialize people? How do you make, yeah, how do you engender or cultivate awe? Which is, it ends up being I think, a more effective, almost passive approach to social change. So you don't lead people, you make it easier for people to follow certain courses again.
Yeah, I think the way I would look at it is like you're tending to the soil of the culture,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's going to affect what grows out of the culture. It was like
Yes.
I was on a book tour in 2019 for a book I did on plant medicine, and I was speaking to people who are really in these psychedelic groups in their local city and all of that. And I think I was the only one saying it, the only one that I was aware of anyway. But I was like, beware of this psychedelic renaissance. Renaissance means a rebirth. And we have to like first look at what is the culture that this thing is being born into, because it's going to be shaped by that culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think over the past, 5 or 6 years have been proven right in that, if we're having a psychedelic renaissance in late capitalism, capitalism is going to like co-opt everything good about psychedelics and try to use it to kind of perpetuate the machine.
Yeah.
So I say no to that. All right, Doug, man, it's been great talking with you. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
sure. It's good to be with you. Where
So
are you
Team Human,
physically?
physically, I'm sitting on the southwestern coast of Vancouver Island. So
Oh,
just across the Salish Sea from, or the Puget Sound from Seattle.
yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
where it's all happening in the tech
Yeah.
world. But we're in the woods here.
Yeah.
Cool. So
But
Team
yeah.
Human's still going and there's a
Oh
community
yeah,
around it. So
teamhuman.fm. Anybody can come listen to that. It's fun. It's free. You can support it if you want. I got a Substack, rushkoff.substack.com. But again, I'm writing a couple times a month, so it's light load. And this new book, or this new version of an old book.
yeah,
Not that old.
easily digestible. You don't have to take it all
Yeah,
in one sitting.
exactly. But you're welcome to. Take it on a plane. Yeah,
Right
we'll
on.
finish it. All right, you
Yeah,
take
no
care,
need to
man.
raw dog it.
Right. I love
All
that.
right. Take care, brother.